I love old stuff, and I can't stand to see things go in the scrap heap. That's the actual piece that was in his Foot Locker through the whole war.
It did not turn out well. I had a bad wound on my right calf, and I had a lot of time to think.
It happened to me, but it was my wife, and I'm a financial advisor.
Things have become a lot more powerful when you have a story to tell.
Especially retirement. You know, retirement can be scary.
I teach them the mistakes that I made. At the end of that year, I went into the biggest depression I've ever gone into. I've lost focus.
I failed so much more. That's the best teacher.
Failure is not a different part of success. Failure is part of success.
Yeah. Because you're learning and you're failing and you're trying and you're trying to build that momentum. And success, you've got to be able to get up and dust yourself off and learn from it, and you got to be relentless.
For those who don't know Mark Kingsberry, he's a financial advisor with Thrivent Financial. Since I've been here working with him and I connected a few years ago. I actually had to drop a check off to his house from my previous brokerage. That's the first time I met him.
That was a long time ago.
I know. I saw this office, and I knew you worked out of here. I saw this office, which I know we're going to talk about. It's one of our first things. I saw this office on Facebook Marketplace. I remembered that I knew you, and we were connected on Facebook, and I messaged you. I was like, is this place still available? And you said, yes. I said, take it down. I'm coming. And I came and recorded a video. So tell us, first of all, just, a little bit about your background in financial advising. And secondly, this amazing office that we work out of.
I've been in the business for 20 years or so, but not in this building, but I've been in this building now for, I think, 11 years or so I've been here. And so the biggest thing as far as this space goes is it used to be a photography studio, and it looked very different back then. But I won free photograph family session at my church, and it was here, and that was my first time ever walking into this place. And you come in over here and you got that spiral staircase out front and the brick and everything, and I just fell in love with the space. This used to actually be where they did this. This was a studio. And this wall was just a wall, and so this is where you would sit, and the cameras and all were over there. But I fell in love with the space, and so it was one of those things that I said, if this place ever comes available, man, I would love to work in a space like this, because it was just a really cool, organic kind of a feel, different, and it worked out. I happened to be in the right place at the right time when they were shutting down, and so we got the space. We've done a lot of work to it. We've expanded it, but then we've got all this stuff around here, which is kind of, I guess, what I know that you kind of like, and this most of my clients like. When I was a kid, I worked in movie theaters in New Orleans, and so I started collecting movie posters. And so most of these movie posters are from the 70s, a couple of them from the 60s. All old movies, but most of my favorite movies. A couple of them from the 80s, but most of them are they're all originals. And I got a lot more, but my wife won't let me hang them at the house. So this was a great place to where I could do that. And then one of my other passions is I love vintage audio. So I'm a child of the 70s, growing up with these old stereos and everything. And then, when you're that young, you couldn't afford all the stuff that you would see. I could never have. Anyway, I just built out a system for myself. I said, I'm going to go find some old vintage stuff so I can have for my records and just do that again. I did that many years ago, and then it just turned into an obsession. And I've kind of got a problem now, as you can see.
Yeah, I know. That's
so, but it turns out clients love it. They
Yeah.
come in here and they see the movie. Like, my dad took me to see that movie, or I remember that when I was a kid, I watched that movie and gosh, it scared me. Or, oh my God, my older brother had a stereo just like that, or that was our family system. We had those kind of speakers and that kind of a thing. And so it turned into a really, cool connection point with clients when they would come in to meet. And then I'll just turn on a song. I'll say, what's one of your favorite songs? And because I got them all wired in on internet. So, we can sit here and rock out, which is kind of nice, and it just creates a cool environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Like, everybody that I've brought through here all says the same thing. So you've done a great job with creating that
I appreciate
that
it.
homey feel that you feel like you're talking about. And it's funny because we have a similar story, only I have, like, I guess what would be considered a shoe obsession. So a lot of the shoes that I wanted in high school, the Jordans and all the stuff, my dad was not putting out $150 on it. He'll buy you a nice pair of, like, name brand shoes, okay, but he's not spending that sort of money on Jordans. So I have in my closet, I have a collection of all the Jordans that I wanted when I was in high school that he wouldn't get me.
Very
So
cool. Very
not
cool.
nearly as interesting as putting it all in an office. But yeah, I think it's funny how we all have like that childhood thing of like, or I think a lot of people do, of that childhood thing like that you couldn't have, but then or
Yeah.
like for some people it's cars, right? Some people have
Right.
a major car obsession. Obviously, you can't get that stuff when you're a kid. You grow up and that's your passion. So, but that's cool to know about the theater. I'm always asked all the time, "What's up with the movie posters?" And I'm like, I don't know. I guess he just likes movies.
Yeah.
But it's
That,
cool to know now. Now I can say, oh, he actually worked in a theater.
yeah. And that's where most of them came from. And when our theater, I happened to be working, they were shutting it down. And in the tech booth, which the projection room, that's where there was this absolute treasure trove of movie posters, and yeah, that were all just going to go in the scrap heap. And so, and I immediately rated them, but then I started really trading and going and getting things, and but I love old stuff, and I can't stand to see things go in the scrap heap.
Right.
And it's just something that's been in me since I was I don't know. I don't like throwing things away, which a lot of times is a good thing.
Right.
But sometimes it just it drives my wife crazy, because sometimes I'm like, maybe I'll need that, or I can fix that.
Yeah.
Or that's why I do have pieces under here that don't work, but I'm just convinced I can fix them and save them, because I hate to see things going into the trash heap,
Right.
So anyhow, but I think I'm a collector. My wife thinks I'm a hoarder, but but there's also just certain things. I also have sentimental things, like for instance, this room, some of the things we called, and like you call it, the hero room, and this is what
Yeah.
we call this conference room, we called it the Hall of Heroes, and it was because it's all military posters for the most part that are in here, and or heroes in here. And we have the veterans flag that we have all my clients that are veterans, we ask them to sign.
Right.
And so we have that, and that was a gift from a good friend of mine. He'd built that, and we've carried on that tradition of having our veterans sign it. So anyway, that's kind of that's a bit. And that picture right there is actually a nod to that too. That is a pinup girl,
Yeah.
from my grandfather, his foot locker from World War II. He was in the Marine Corps, Battle of Guadalcanal, and that's the actual
That's awesome
piece that was in his foot locker through the whole war. So yeah. So there's still pieces like that around here. The flag behind me is my dad's flag when he passed away, that was given to us because he was a World War II Navy.
Right.
And so stuff like that. But that's just that's what makes the place cool.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, you could tell that's what gives this place, the heart and feel that it has. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of brick and walls and wood. That's those little stories that make a place meaningful. So,
Absolutely.
Well, let's dig in, man. Let's dig in. So I have a line of questions for you. I know you have a few questions for me.
Yeah.
I know you have some real estate based questions for me. I have some financial stuff for you.
Okay.
And let's start off with the people that you kind of gravitate towards, or the niches that you found. I know we spoke privately before this. Said it's usually families and small businesses. And so could you tell a little bit about like how you help them out, and what's the best thing they should be considering?
Yeah, I mean it's the gambit, the whole financial gambit that we work with folks on. So when you're talking about families, we're very holistic in what we do. We really try to look at everything in somebody's financial life. So whether it comes to saving and putting money away, what's the best way to do that? Your 401k, if you have that at work, or if you don't. A lot of people just starting a Roth. What does that mean? How do you handle that? And then how do you proportion those things and balance those things? And then protection pieces too, managing risk within your family. Do you have disability at work? And should you have disability at work? What does that mean? What do you do with that? Why should I have that? We talk about also generational things with families too. Are some people that are kind of like in my age group, have adult kids, but they also have some kids that are younger that they're still helping out, or still looking at, or still working with financially, or still have some commitments to financially. But they also might have parents that are on the decline now, and they're actually having to take care of them. They call it the sandwich generation. So helping those kind of folks gravitate back and forth between those kind of spheres, and how to balance that. But also sometimes it's I've inherited this, and we all tend to inherit something. Sometimes we inherit something good like money.
Right.
Sometimes we inherit bills,
Yeah.
or costs. So, how do we plan for that? So those are generally the things, all of those types of things with families that we'll work with. And in business owners, how do I value my business? How do I know what is it worth? How do I have things set up for my employees? Am I doing things the right way? Can I set up benefits for them? That sounds really expensive. What can I provide? How do I do that in the most efficient manner? But doing all those kind of things. How am I going to transition my business? Maybe they're thinking about retiring and they're going to sell their business, or they want to transition it to their son or daughter or something, or partner. And how do we do that in a good way, or how do we structure on the front end so that we can do that? So those are a lot of the things that we look at. And then my partner, who used to work for the IRS, so he comes with a very unique skill set. So, and the overall tax implications of how those things work. We also have a CPA. We have a few people like that, CPAs and attorneys that we work with, help structure all of that. So, we kind of serve as a quarterback in terms of helping people draw all of that. And a lot of folks just don't know. They're like, I don't know what I need help with, but I know that I'm worried that I'm not set up properly. So that's kind of how we work with folks.
Yeah, 100%. Like I can speak to that personally because I've been in self-employed sales now for 15 years. Before that, I was with NASA for about a decade, and I'd say about 4 years ago now, I got into a golf cart accident. I mean, I wasn't drinking. My kid was actually with me. A lot of people hear golf cart accident and they assume I'm slamming beers with my buddies
Right.
and we're jumping dunes on the golf course, but it
You
wasn't.
can really get hurt in a golf cart.
Yeah, it was just it took 2 seconds. My daughter was coming up to the big stone pillars that tell you what hole you're on or every tee box. She was going up. She was about to clip it with the side of the cart, and I put my hand and my leg out, so my reflexes totally messed me over here, Mark, because I put my hand and my arm out like I'm going to Heisman, like stiff physics and gravity, and
Right.
it did not turn out well. I had a bad wound on my right calf, and I couldn't work for 4 months. I was on a wound vac machine. I watched my savings dwindle down to nothing.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of time to think, about all the stuff that you're talking about with disability and, what to do. I was with a brokerage before that offered stock and equity. I left that company to start my own brokerage with my partner. And it turns out we weren't really partners. I was just an agent at large. And so I had a lot of time to think about, my finances and the decisions I made. And ultimately, that's why I came back to a company that offers equity and revenue share, because, I would encourage people to talk to you about that, because a lot of people don't think about it.
No.
My life changed on a golf course. I wasn't doing anything reckless.
No,
It was just,
and that's what happens. And look, it happened to me, but it was my wife. And I'm a financial advisor, and I do this for a living. And this is just one of those things. You would think, it's like what the contractor is a great contractor, but you go to his house and there's all the projects aren't done. Well, this is an area that I did not have that covered, and my wife was in a car accident, and she hasn't been able to work since, and full disability, and as far as getting on disability, that's
a nightmare.
Well, yeah, and she was a fairly young woman when this happened, and she's still young. I mean, my wife is, she's not old. She's going to kill me when she sees this now, but. The point is that you would think that really impacted us, because we lost her income and it really severely impacted our homes. That's one of those things that are really high on my list, because from personal experience, it happens.
Things have become a lot more powerful when you have a story to tell.
Absolutely.
Versus just like, hey, you should get this policy because it'll protect. In this case, it's like, no, let me tell you what my experience and what I went through.
Yeah, and she was just driving, going to the outlet mall, going to do some Christmas shopping. So
Right.
Anyway, yeah, it happens. So yes, so making sure of those kind of things, and that's your story. That's exactly the kind of stuff that that a good advisor should be able to help you with. The one of the things you get when you're working with me or any advisor that's been in the business for a while is you're banking on their experience.
Right.
That they've worked with enough people, that they've seen a lot.
Yeah.
so that they have that experience through their clients that they're sharing with you.
Right.
And so that's really a big piece of it. We've got clients now that we're working with their grandkids, which is really cool. And being able to guide people through this, especially retirement. Retirement can be scary.
Yeah.
And but going through that whole family piece, but these kind of experiences, that you've had, that I've had, but we share those with our clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All
Yeah.
right. You have something for me? I know you got a list of
Yeah.
questions
Well,
over there.
I'll tell you. It's going to sound silly. Tell me exactly, what is your role?
Okay.
What do you do?
So my current role is the state and managing broker for Energy Realty. It's a national company. We're in the middle of expanding. I think we're open in about 15 states, give or take, right now. The goal is to be open in every state. We don't have a hard goal of, we're not racing towards it. It's about finding the right brokers and the right foundational partners to align with. But it's exciting for me because it's helping a company grow towards the beginning. Additionally to my state broker role, I'm the vice president of broker operations, which is a fancy way of saying I help out the brokers, the other state brokers. I make sure they know what's going on with corporate updates, our systems, our software, all the stuff. So I'm the tactical boots on the ground. I hate to say like manager or supervisor because we're all self-employed, but I'm just like the leader of the brokers. So I help them out. So that's my exact role. And I also still help families buy and sell real estate. At least at this time, I mainly work off referrals, past clients, things like that. I'm not out there grinding for the business like I did when I was coming up. Now I train and manage the agents that are with me to do what I did. And furthermore, I teach them the mistakes that I made
Yeah.
because, I had a very successful come up into real estate. My first year I sold I'd say 6 or 7 houses, which is really good for a first year agent. Second year was 10 to 14. Third year was 14 plus, probably 20. And then the fourth year was when my business really took off. I closed 34 deals as a solo agent. No team, no transaction coordinator, just no showing assistant, just me, myself, and I out there running deals. And at the end of that year, I went into the biggest depression I'd ever gone into because, I wasn't living right. I was just burning the midnight oil. I was eating whatever I wanted. I was drinking alcohol to take the stress off of the business or take the edge off of it. The only problem is it's a very stressful business and there's always an edge to be taken off. So I fell down. My sales numbers the next year were abysmal and I had to rebuild myself. It took a few years. It wasn't like an immediate ramp up. It took 3 or 4 years to actually drop the excuses, drop a lot of my bad habits, lose a bunch of weight, and kind of recreate this arc I'm now on. I feel like in my redemption story. So when I train and manage agents, it's not from oh, I was a great agent and this is all the stuff I did. It's keeping them focused because I've lost focus. I fell off, and I know what happens in that process, and I know how to dig out of it. So yeah, that's what I do and where I'm at.
I can completely relate with that because I've had advisors, new advisors, that they're getting into the business and starting out, and I think this applies to probably anybody who's got to go out and talk to the public, and I'll tell them, the only difference between me and you is I've answered the same questions 10,000 more times than you have, but the biggest difference is I failed so much more.
All right.
I've failed over and over again, and in a lot of different ways. But that's the best teacher, and being able to get up and learn and move on. That failure is ultimately what anybody who's achieved any certain amount of success. If you talk to them, that they failed, and
Yeah.
they'll tell you that that'll probably be the number one thing they'll talk about is how many times they failed to get to where they are.
Right.
That and fundamentals. I think
Yeah.
that's the other thing is
There's
being,
this, yeah, absolutely. There's a saying I like. I'm probably going to flub it up a little bit, but you'll get the aspect of it. It's a failure is not a different part of success. Failure is the part of success. And I know I flubbed that quote up, but it's good to it's paramount to mention because, and I know we're going to get into mindsets of agents too, but if you don't characterize failure properly, it becomes your victim story. It becomes all these things that happen to you, and this is the reason I am because of all these things.
Yes.
And it's not. It's about making the choice of okay, these things happened. It's going to take a while to dust yourself off. I'm not going to lie to you, right? It's not easy to just pretend like this major failure or these things didn't happen, but you don't have to stay there. You can choose to make that your fuel for success and not.
Yeah, it has to be. It's one of those things that if you're in an occupation that has no safety net, if you're, you're in an occupation, if you're self-employed, so that if you're not working and you're not out there you're not making anything. Not that there's anything wrong with having a salary or working those kind of jobs. It's great, but there's a different mindset in being being an entrepreneur, and especially one that has to go out and sing for your supper every day. But that is the biggest thing is that doubt creeps in your head, because especially early in a career, it's ups and downs, and it's so dramatic because you're learning and you're failing and you're trying and you're trying to build that momentum and success. A successful business, back in the old days, they had those big those wheels that they would sharpen axes on, those made out of
Yeah.
stone, big. Well, I think in my mind, it's a massive one, like the size of this room, that you've actually got to sit there and start turning on your own. It is hard, and you might not even feel like it's moving hardly at all. But man, you've got to build that momentum. You
Right.
got to build that inertia. And that is the hardest part of getting started in this business, because and that's why a lot of people are, in any business that's a commission business or a business that's based on, meeting people and getting in there. That part is why people fail so much, because they let that doubt get in their heads, and it's game over. And you've got to be able to get up and dust yourself off and learn from it, and you got to be relentless.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's funny you mention that, because me and my buddy, so during the holidays, it's like usually the slowest, I hate to say slow season in real estate, because if you're constantly prospecting, you should have business going on. But we had a saying for making those calls around the holidays. It was pushing your truck through the mud is what we used. So you know how
Yeah.
your truck, your back, I mean, let's just say you're so deep in the mud, you can only see half the wheel.
Right.
And you got to start rocking it, and then
Yes.
eventually start kind of slowly trudging out.
Yep.
That's what we equated prospecting during the holidays to. And the agents that did the best were the ones that were rocking and pushing that truck during the slow season, and then when you get out in spring, takes off. But the agents that sit there stuck in the mud during the holidays, put their feet up, they're like, oh, the market's slow, they just kind of check out until January or February. Then you're coming from a dead stop. Your truck, half the wheel's still in the mud, where the other agent that was pushing, rocking it,
Right.
their business is going to do a little bit better the next year. So
Well, and it's kind of that self-fulfilling prophecy, or that making that excuse piece to let yourself fail, is you can say, well, it's the holidays.
yeah,
So I'm not gonna have any business. It's the holidays.
right.
Well, that's what's gonna happen.
Yeah, that's fine. That's just,
You know?
yeah, it's a story.
Well, that kind of brings up another question I have. What do you think is, like, for an agent starting out, what's the number one thing you see that's the biggest hurdle for them to overcome, or the biggest problem you see for a brand new agent starting out?
There's so much information out there. It's overwhelming. There's so much noise. There's so many different things you can do that it gets overwhelming. So agents tend to not focus on what I consider the fundamentals. I know we're coming into the age of AI and a lot of technology and all that stuff, but in my opinion, I mean, it's not my opinion. Real estate is still personal. It's still relationship based. And agents, I think, at least, we're not talking about all, just the ones that I see struggle, come into the industry to think it's all about filming content, learning dance moves on TikTok. Nothing wrong with that. I'm sure it generates business. But for me, what I pound on is the fundamentals. How to have conversations with people. When you're making phone calls, what to say, how to say it. How you say what you say is far more important than what you're actually saying. Being an active listener when people are talking, it's very easy. And I know you've been in sales for a long time. Salespeople tend to always be ready for their next turn to
Right.
talk. And it's a skill you have to learn. If you're good at sales, it's a skill you have to learn. Just shut up and wait until the person's done talking. They could say something that could trigger something that would help you either get a listing appointment, get an appointment, or maybe you hear something, and like, I like to be very transparent with stuff. Maybe I hear a potential seller say something that lets me know, like, hey, look, maybe
That's
this
right.
isn't the right decision for you right now. Maybe we need to hold off,
Right.
because it doesn't really
And
seem
if you're thinking about the next thing to say and not listening to what they're saying,
right.
you can miss something that's because a lot of those things that are really, gosh, our businesses are so similar. A lot of those things, it's those, sometimes it's just how they say it,
Right.
or maybe just some little nuance that you can key in on that could completely change the whole conversation.
Right. And the other thing for me is the just some form of action, consistent action for newer agents. I'll give you a perfect example. So I have a lot of agents that are like, I hate making phone calls. I got news for you. I've been in the business for 15 years. I hate making, still to this day, I tend to prospect more and recruit agents. Still to this day, I hate, I'm like, oh, I have to sit there and talk myself into it. It's
Yeah.
not, nobody feels, if you feel like waking up and making sales calls,
There's something wrong with
mazel
you.
tov. Like you have respect. I don't. And the agents that tend to struggle are the ones that can't push past that. It's a skill to realize that you can do what you don't want to do. You don't have to feel like it to do it. And as a
Right.
matter of fact, once you start doing it, that hesitation seems to go away. Or secondarily, I have an agent, shout out to Tori. She's like, Speedy, I hate making phone calls, but I'll do everything else. She will go out and canvass neighborhoods. She will go out and hand out door hangers for thinking about selling your house. She will sit here. She sat here for one Hero Room Friday, and the whole time she was making these little gift things, these little gift bags with her business card that she dropped off to a school to hand out to all the teachers.
Yep.
So it's like, look, I don't care if you don't want to make phone calls, that's fine, but you have to be prepared to do something. You can't say, I don't want to do this and not do that either. That's obviously, that's not going to work. So that's the biggest struggle I see for agents coming in now is they're too caught up on the tech and not enough on the relationship building and what it's going to take to actually be successful.
That's very interesting. It's amazing how similar our worlds are.
Yeah, it's self-employed, it's consultative
Yeah.
based
Yeah.
sales.
Yeah.
All right, next one for you. The number one financial mistake you see most people make.
Well, the number one financial mistake I see people make is not getting started,
Right.
is not getting things moving. Especially young folks, because they have it in their head that I can only put away this amount. Like, man, I can't afford more than, I've got like $25 at the end of the week. That's about it. I'm living check to check. And truthfully, if you're living check to check, you can probably find a little bit of money, but they think, well, what good is it going to do?
What's the point?
Yeah, I can maybe put $50 away. Well, I may as well let's just go out and let's order a pizza instead, because it's not going to do me any good. That's the number one mistake I think people make. And again, personal experience. When I was in my 20s, early 20s, I was about 23 years old and married. My wife and I we got married when we were 20, and just before we turned 21. And I was in the restaurant business, and I was making good money. I made about $50,000 a year or so for my salary. So back then that was a lot of money. And my wife was working, and we went and we said we need to see somebody to make sure what we're doing financially. If we need to get some help here and make sure that what we're doing is right. And this is, again, showing my age. There used to be Sears out there at Clearview Mall.
Right.
Okay. And some people I doubt that, I don't know if any people watching this are going to remember this, but anyway, there was a Sears there, and I think it was on the second floor of Sears. Tucked in the back, there was this desk, like basically it's just a metal desk in a hallway, and he had a sign above it. It was a financial advisor, and I'd grown up going to Sears with my mom. And so that was the only thing, because they weren't, this was a long time ago. You didn't have Raymond James and Ed Jones and all these things all over the place, or it just wasn't as prevalent as it is now. At that point in my life, I did not recognize that, but I knew that there was a financial advisor at Sears. So I said, let's go talk to that guy.
Right.
And so we went and sat down, and he asked us, we had one meeting with this guy, and he asked us, what do you want to do in retirement? What do you want retirement to look like? And I don't remember exactly what I told him, but I know we said, well, we like to be able to travel and not have to worry about money. We like to be able to do things and, be able to, enjoy our lives whenever that happened. And keep in mind, I was 23 years old. The guy's asking me, what do you want retirement to look like? So, but whatever we described to him, he sat there and did some things on his computer, and he said, $800, you need to be able to put $800 a month away. That's what you need to start, $800 a month. And we looked at each other, and I'm like, that's like more than that's like half of my salary.
Right.
I can't even begin to do that. And he said, but that's what you need. If you can't do that, if you want to be able to retire, that's what you're going to need to be able to do. We walked out of there completely defeated.
I bet you did. That's terrifying.
And now luckily I had a 401k, but I still wasn't even putting that in my 401k, because I didn't have that. And I'll tell you, that is the most expensive appointment of my lifetime, was that appointment, because it convinced me at a very early age that there was just no way that I was going to be able to put enough money away. So, and if I would have, and thank God I was putting money in my 401k, but even when you're in your 20s, if you're putting $50 away, the idea of the time value of money, or $25, that's the same thing as somebody my age putting away $5,000 a month. And so that's the number one mistake. I think people don't understand that, man, if all you can put away is $10, put away the $10. Even if it's you're older, it doesn't matter. It's not going to get better. Start putting the money
Right.
away, but put away what you can. Do it. Just get started and do it. That's the number one mistake.
I like it. You got a question for me before I move on with my list?
Yes. What would be your best advice? Because this is something that again, personal. As a homeowner, prospective homeowner, what do you think that if I'm looking for a prospective agent to work with, I'm trying to select an agent, what's the number one thing that I should be keying in on?
I'll tell you a pet peeve of mine. Don't hire your family member just because they have a license. If your family member is actively in the business and closing a significant amount of deals, absolutely go for it. I mean, I know some people, rightfully so, some people are like, look, I'd rather my family member not be involved, because if something goes sideways,
Makes sense.
it could damage I've seen it.
Yeah.
It will damage a family relationship if something goes sideways, somebody messes something up. I've seen it happen. So don't go with your family member just because they're in real estate. Secondly, interview the agent. Okay. I've seen agents out there. I know how long they've been in the business. I know how many deals they've sold in the past so many years, and they don't have, just because you have been in the business for 8 years does not mean you have experience, if that makes any sense.
Right.
Yeah, you have all the CE, and we can all read contracts and negotiate for the most part, but the agent that's been in the business for 8 years but has only sold like maybe 30 houses in the past 8 years, okay number, it's above average. But an agent that's been in the business for 4 years but has sold 60 to 80 homes, or close to 100, in my opinion, has more experience than the person that's not really selling at a high level. So it's just, I guess very similar to your world. Make sure the person, ask them hard questions. How many houses have you sold in the past 2 years? That's important, because the contracts change, things change. Part-time agent, I guess, is the best way to put it. What I consider like part-time agents, or agents that don't do it for a living.
Mm-hmm.
When I come up to them in negotiations or I get a contract from them, I can tell just from the way it's written. The check boxes aren't marked off, the way that the language in the contract, I can tell it's an agent that's not sharp. And what's going to happen is, if you hire this agent, I'm going to take their lunch money in negotiations, because I can tell, oh, I'm dealing with somebody here that might not be as proficient as they should be. I'm a lot more likely to get what I want done for my clients, which I know is kind of tough to say out loud, but your agent should be somebody who is obviously professional,
Mm-hmm.
knows what they're doing. You don't want the commission hungry agents. There's two different agents in this industry, believe it or not. There are agents that are in it for the money, which I know, look, I know it's not a nonprofit. We all have to make ends meet and feed our family, but there are agents that are in this for money. They're great salespeople, but they're not good real estate professionals. A real estate professional doesn't care about the commission check. They care about the client first. And when you care about the client first, the money takes care of itself. If you're worried about the money, you are more likely to talk somebody into doing something they probably shouldn't do. Maybe it's not right, that it's not the right time to sell. Hey, maybe it's not the right time for you to buy. Those are all honest things that an agent should say to somebody, and not just try to, any agent can sell you a house. But is an agent going to sit down with you, go over your whole situation, and decide whether or not, or advise you on whether or not you should even purchase or sell, or whatever the case may be? So I know it's a very long way of answering that.
No. And again, it amazes me how similar that's very similar. So follow-up question then on that. Should I, as a homeowner, should I interview a few agents? I mean, what should I do? What do you suggest? Because that's something I'm like, I think most people, I don't know. Well, maybe I am the exception, but I don't know. But I've bought and sold several homes in my lifetime, and I don't think I've ever called multiple agents and had them come in and interview. And based on what you're telling me, I'm like, it's kind of a stupid move. Why in the heck wouldn't I do that? I mean, I tell people that when they're looking for a financial advisor, don't just interview a few of us. I think that's very important. So would you suggest the same type of thing for a homeowner?
Absolutely. Unless, if an agent or two in and you just feel it, like, okay, this person's sharp. As soon as it's a feeling, right? As soon as you feel that confidence, I say go for it.
Okay.
But if you don't, if there's any hesitation whatsoever, if there's anything like if there's an inkling of I'm not sure, absolutely keep interviewing agents until you find the right fit.
Love it. Okay. That's good advice. I think that's advice I've never gotten before, and I
Yeah, because you
appreciate.
are hiring them.
Yeah,
You are hiring them to do a
I
very
appreciate
important
that. Yeah,
job, and there's a lot of money on the line.
yeah, yeah.
There's a
Well,
lot of,
it's usually the single biggest investment somebody has is their home.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. I guess my follow up to that is, how would you just go with your Aunt Becky that barely sells any houses because she's got a license? When we're talking about, there's a lot of money that goes back
Yeah.
and forth in these transactions, and there's a lot of liability. There's a lot of, there's a very complicated process.
Yeah.
So yeah, just don't hire your family member because they have a license. That's the biggest thing I got, because there's a lot of licensees.
Yeah.
It's unfortunately in the business, I think the average, okay, well, first of all, 75% of realtors last year did not close a single deal. 75%.
Wow.
So that means 25% are the ones that are handling the most deals. So it's a very relevant question to ask your family member, your Aunt Becky, hey, how many homes have you sold in the past 2 years before you just, or how many homes have you sold in your lifetime?
So you're saying 1 out of 4
Yes.
real estate agents.
According to NAR, yeah, the statistics we got.
That blows my mind.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of licensees that aren't active in the business. They hairdressers or whatever, like no shade. You do what you got to do to make ends meet.
Right.
But there's a lot of people that just pick up a license to kind of sell here and there. If they have a family member that wants to buy, they'd like to obviously make the money off of that. They're just not in the business full time. And when you're not in the business full time, it'd be like if I walked onto a Saints, like I'm a big strong guy, right? If I go walk onto a Saints training camp, guess what's going to happen to me?
Right. Right.
These guys are out there doing it every day. I'm going to get ate up. And the same thing happens in contracts and negotiations when things go sideways or things don't go well. My client's in good shape because they have me. But if they got Aunt Becky on the other side that's only sold 2 houses in the last 4 years, Aunt Becky's in trouble.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Right. So what I got next? Okay. What's the most important way, in your opinion, obviously, to build wealth long term? And how should people be thinking about that? What should their mindset be? And let's take away long-term wealth building. Let's just say, kind of to your point, to getting started, to creating some sort of financial freedom.
Mm-hmm.
What's that like?
Well, a couple of things. One, I think the most important piece is just is a fundamental thing, and it really has. This is not even really anything to do with being financial advice or anything like that. I mean, it is financial, but this is having a system. Most people don't have a good basis in their home finances and how they set things up. So I would say one of the most important pieces is attach purpose to your accounts. So even as your money comes in, whether you're self-employed or you're getting a paycheck, that money that's coming in, it's not all your money. And I think that's probably a big misconception is you got to think about it in terms of, well, sometimes the money you're getting still has to go to Uncle Sam. Now, if you got a paycheck and they're doing withholdings, okay, that's fine. You still may owe money, but so some of it still may have to go to Uncle Sam. But so, that's one person who's got a stake in your paycheck. Also, your family, you've got to pay your utilities, you've got to pay maybe your mortgage or your rent. So those are all pieces, and you have to think of that in terms of, well, that's not my money. What I see a lot of folks do is they just get this check in or they get this gob of money in, and it's all mine, and I buy and spend and buy and spend and buy and spend, and there's no purpose attached to it. And then all of a sudden it's the end of the month, and they're like, why can't I get ahead? Why am I, and it doesn't matter whether I've seen people come in that, people that are just making, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 a year that are like that, which you would say, well, it's really hard. Yeah. But you know what? I've seen people that come in here that make 200, 300, 400,000, 500,000, and they have the same problem. And it's because they never had that fundamental building block of, okay, I've got this money comes into this account, and then I've got an account here. This is my home account where I'm going to pay my utilities and whatnot. This is my Uncle Sam account. This is where I'm going to pay my taxes either quarterly or at the end of the year or whatever it may be. This is an account that's going to be my savings. And so that money, and you have earmark, and you be very purposeful of how you have these accounts set up and where you put your money. And so I think developing that kind of a discipline early on is huge. And because we don't teach that, we don't teach things like that in school. And it doesn't have to be exactly what I'm saying. Some people may have that version of that already, and that's great if you do. but everybody should have some system like that. If all of your money just goes into an account and you don't have any kind of a budget or any kind of an idea of where this money's going, you're just writing the checks out. I'm just living. I'm writing the check out. The bill comes in, I'm writing the check out, and I'm just hoping I'm going to have money left at the end of the month. And it's like, hooray, I've got some money left over. And it just gets gobbled up, and it just gets spent because there's no purpose assigned to it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's perfect what you're talking about, because it's, even if you try to set that money aside or have something in savings, like something's always going to happen.
Yeah.
Tires need to be replaced. The HVAC's going to go out. Something's going to happen to eat that money up. So the quicker you can get that out of your hands, in your opinion, and get it elsewhere,
absolutely,
it should be a very important mindset. And I think, we've all heard the cliche term, pay yourself first, right?
Yeah.
But I think, and I can speak for myself, I'll put my hand up as a guilty party. Just recently, you and I sat down and I started getting, some stuff going with you guys. But I did not always adopt that mentality. I had the mentality like, okay, I got to pay all my bills. And then whatever's left over, never did anything elaborate except my biggest year in real estate. I flubbed that year up. I went on 4 vacations and I went ballistic, not even crazy. Okay. Just like, Universal, Disney, stuff like that, but didn't set anything aside, nothing. And when I got that W-9, Mark, it was 6 figures. It was
right,
a lot of money on paper, and I had nothing. I had nothing to set aside, nothing saved, nothing to show for that aside from great family pictures and memories. But a lot of that just slipped right through my fingers.
Right. And we see that. So I think that's that is something that's fundamental. And I think that is probably one of the biggest things. You said something else though, and you mentioned financial peace or freedom.
Yeah.
And, my partner talks about this all the time, is that's not a number, that's an emotion. And this is something else that I just think that we see so much of. And if there was some advice that I could give folks, and I don't want to get too psychoanalytical or anything, but there's part of it is because we're Americans and we're a consumer society, but a lot of it is just human nature, and social media and everything, I think, just amplifies a lot of it. So what I'm getting at is, everybody puts on Facebook or they put it on Instagram or whatever. It's never, this is me digging a ditch, having, working my tail off. This is me, stocking the shelves at Walmart or whatever it is you do for a living. This is me sitting here filling out all these forms. No, it's pictures of, this is me in front of my new car. This is me on this great vacation. This is me out having dinner at a fancy restaurant. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. My point is that I think is, again, I don't know if I would call it a skill or I would call it a muscle, but it's something that we don't see a lot of. I don't see it often enough. When I do see it, it stands out like a diamond, is contentment, is learning the art of contentment. I see folks that come in like those ones I described that making these crazy salaries and it's hard to believe that, you make that kind of money, but and you end up not having a lot of, you still end up with more month than check at the end of it. Well, the contentment piece is learning how to be happy and say, I've got a great house. I have folks that are coming out, been in the same house for 25 years. I love my house. And are there bigger, nicer houses? Absolutely. Is this the nicest house in the world? No. But they're content with it and they're happy. They raise their family in it and they're fine with it. I'm content with the car that I drive. Is it brand new? No, it's 10 years old, but it gets me from point A to point B. It works just fine. It's not fancy, but there's nothing wrong with it. And I'm not saying that you can't go have nice things. I'm not saying that, but what I think that we have a lack of is, or we should all work harder on, and then me included, is, and I do actively work on this, is trying to be content in the moment, learning to enjoy life in the moment, learning to appreciate what I have, because ultimately those are those kind of things that we're driving that, we're driving. You should, I want to have the nicest car. I want to have the next best thing. I want to have that next cell phone. I need the biggest house. I want to go, I want bigger, more, better, because we equate that with success, or we equate that with happiness. And happiness, again, what is happiness? It's an emotion. Financial peace, that's an emotion. And it's born out of contentment. I can't tell you how many millionaires there are out there that are just living in regular neighborhoods, driving 10-year-old cars, living in a 2 or 3 bedroom house, and they're probably right next door to you. You'd never know it, because they're living in a neighborhood where that's just filled with folks that are going to work every day. And I meet them every day. We have clients that come in here. You just would never know it. You would just never know it. But they're worth $1, $2, $3, $4, $5 million. And and it's just because they're content, they're frugal, and they just have a different mindset. That's something that I think is really nowadays, that financial contentment piece, or financial peace, or financial freedom. I think that is something that's a big deal today.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I can, I have a personal thing with that too, because I think I'm ambitious, right? I like nice things.
Yeah.
I want to pursue those things, but I'm also, like you said, it took a while to practice this and get good at it. But there's a difference between settling where you're at and
Yes.
just saying like, okay, this is my life now, and there's another difference in my opinion than saying like, okay, I'm
That's not contentment.
right.
That's
Right.
complacency.
Right. But there's a different one where I'm at now. It's like, I am grateful for all the things I have. I'm grateful, the house, it's not, the biggest and the best, but we have shelter, it's climate controlled, everything works in it. We have food in the fridge.
I can afford it.
Yeah. I turn this little nozzle on and get hot water,
Yep.
and I think a lot of people, especially Americans, we don't see the whole global picture. Like Gary Vee's an entrepreneur that I follow, that he points out on a regular basis. He's like, look, if you're buying like $5 or $6 coffees and you're complaining about your life, you are soft, because there are people, millions of people worldwide that don't have access to clean drinking water.
Right.
And just the basic necessities that we have that we take for granted. And another thing that I've heard that I really like is somebody went to bed crying last night, praying for the things that you have.
Exactly.
And I think in a lot of times we lose sight of that because we want that next thing, that next big house. And my wife probably more than me, and she agrees with this, so I can point to her. She wants the big nice house, and so do I, but the timing has to be right. I don't want, because I've driven around where we live, Oak Harbor, the Eden Alls area. I've seen like big nice fancy houses with failing bulkheads.
Mm-hmm.
And it's failing bulkheads for like months.
Yeah.
So I know as a real estate agent, you don't have $20,000 or $30,000 to replace that bulkhead. You got this big nice house, you got those nice cars out front, but you can't fix this. But that's a serious problem.
Right.
And it's somebody that just wanted the big nice thing, but doesn't really have the finances to actually, maintain that lifestyle.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing you have to factor in too. It's not the monthly income and monthly budget. It's, what happens when this big nice thing, and that's something I talk about in the real estate side too, when this big nice thing needs maintenance, do you have that?
Yeah, I think that's, is to realize that the house that you're in right now, the apartment that you're in right now, the car that you're driving right now, the job that you have right now, somebody praying to be in that spot.
Yeah.
Where you are right now. There's probably 100 people or 500 people that would love to be where you are. And I think understanding that, it doesn't mean that you should just be complacent and say, well, I'm going to stay here. But learning that part, being able to find contentment and happiness in that moment, I think that is so important.
Right.
I really do.
Yeah, I agree. Because I've been on both sides of it. I've been the guy that looked at all this. My friends were buying new houses and new cars, and I couldn't at the time. I can now, but it's like So I get that.
And I see it at work. Because I work with a lot of high net worth clients. They're a lot more wealthy than I am. And if I'm doing my job, that should be the case. And they've got stuff that they're way at a different level. But that's great. That's great. That's okay. But but it's one of those things.
Yeah.
You gotta learn to be, in the moment.
Yeah. And again, we're not saying settle where you're at. We're talking about it's okay to be grateful for what you currently have while in pursuit of bigger and better with proper discipline when it comes to your finances.
I've got a question for you.
Okay.
Could you, again, this is from my perspective on the real estate side, what is the perfect homeowner for an agent to work with? Or what does that person look like? So the perfect homeowner as an agent, when you're coming in, like what is that homeowner? What are the traits of that homeowner, or what do they like? Where you as an agent that's who you want.
Right.
That's like the perfect client to have.
It's difficult to answer because everything's circumstantial, right? It's all
Right.
different. For
But an
me,
ideal.
ideal is just somebody who I guess is open to the market and open to hearing about how to properly be educated with what's going on in the market. I think if you just look at a Zillow's estimate and boss me around and try to tell me, oh, this is what we want, and because my 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 neighbor sold his house for that, and we want that, which I can work with pretty much any personality type. It's because with all my years at NASA and real estate, like you learn how to navigate different behavioral patterns and different personality types. So it's difficult to say like my perfect. And I know you've said this before too. It's really like it's less about any of the other stuff and more of just like, can we work together?
Mm-hmm.
Do I, can we relate? Is there a good personal, relationship here potentially? And it doesn't mean we have to be best pals, but we for sure have to like each other
Oh yeah.
to work together. And I would like to say motivated sellers, but really that doesn't matter either because I've had clients before in the past, good friends and clients that I've been working with for years. They were like, hey, look, we're going to price pretty aggressively. We know we're pricing aggressively. We may not move it, but we just want to see if somebody's willing to pay for it. And that's fine as long as we both have an understanding like, hey, look, you're not going to get frustrated with me because, we know we're asking high. We want to see if we can get it. Might not, maybe so. So it's not necessarily, I guess a lot of realtors might say just easy to work with, motivated because they have to move. So you'll reduce the price down to wherever it needs to be to actually get it sold. And it's more complicated than that to me. It's can we find common ground? What's the motivation? Why are we trying to get this sold? What are we trying to accomplish? What's the goal? From there, can we work together? If I get a vibe from you like you're going to be a problem down the road, and not, it's so weird to say because we're supposed to be like commission based and it doesn't matter, like I'll just take anything, but I really don't. If I can see a behavioral problem, I'm not going to work with you, or I'm going to say, hey, look, I think you need to find another agent. So it's very difficult to answer that because it's all based on how the feeling is across from the table, right? When we sit at the kitchen table together and we go over everything, okay, what are we trying to accomplish? What's our goal? So yeah, that's my perfect client, really, is
Okay.
anybody who can, I don't know. I'm sure it's probably as complicated for you to answer because it's really like, I know you have the no a-hole policy. I kind of have the same thing. I kind of have this.
I've never heard it called that, but okay.
I kind of have the same thing, right? It's like, can we work together? If we can work together, we can figure just about anything out.
The policy he's talking about is what my partner and I will say. We don't have minimums that would work to work with a client. What we'll say is if we like you, it doesn't matter if all you have is a zero in your account. If we don't like you, it doesn't matter how many zeros there are behind your number in your account. We're not going to work with you. So I've never articulated it that way, but fair enough. Fair enough.
So that's my perfect seller. Is just can we work together, or
Yeah.
can we find a solution?
I think the likability, that's a parallel. We certainly won't work with somebody that we don't like. And we made that decision several years ago because early in the business, you're going you got to work with some people that you don't like because you're just you're trying
Same
to.
for me.
Yep, and you got to do that. And so you fortunately your business evolves, and I don't have to do that now, and so I won't, but because I do better work.
Right.
I do better work if we can check that box, and that's the first box we're always trying to check with anybody that we're meeting with in a consult. Do we like them? Because if that's not there, and then from my side of it, the other thing that I would add as an advisor is this client going to take my advice? Because if a client's not going to take your advice, then they're going to be a terrible client for you.
Yeah, that's the other important part for me too. Which I know I just talked about the person pricing slightly aggressively, but if I can make it work, if I can see it in the CMA, and if I can see it kind of somewhat makes sense, I'm willing to take that ride. But if I have, conversely, if I have somebody else, it's like if I tell them, hey, look, this is about where we need to be, and they say, oh no, we want to be, and if that number is astronomically different, and you're not willing to hear me out, I'm not going to take it. A lot of agents, they will take any listing because they'll hope that they can talk them down later. I'm not going to take it because if if let's say, let's use hypothetical numbers. If I'm saying we're at 390 and you want 420 to 430, and I can't make that work on a CMA, I'm going to tell you, like, look, this is,
What's a CMA?
it's a comparative market analysis.
Okay.
It's what we look at when we do when we try to do home value valuations
Okay.
for clients and give them a ballpark idea of what's going on in the market. Because that's the first thing that an appraiser, look, let's say we go 420, we get something under contract for 420. The first thing an appraiser is going to do is
Right.
do the same thing I did and do their own version of a comparative market analysis. And we're overpriced.
Right.
And the appraiser is going to come back and say, hey, this is the new price. Now we're in a fist fight with the buyer and the buyer's agent over reducing the price. And then we're at a stalemate. And it's because we knew we were overpriced to begin with.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very important that, like you said, if are you going to listen to my opinion, or if you're just going to try to boss me around
Right.
and tell me what you want me to do, that I'm not doing that.
Fair enough. I like that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I've got a question for you.
Okay.
So, again, from the homeowner's point of view, what should be a huge red flag for me when I'm looking for an agent and I'm talking to different agents? Let's say I'm doing the interview process,
Right.
and I'm sitting down and talking to an agent. What would be like a number one red flag to look for?
Two major red flags I think that sellers and buyers both should look out for, because now we have buyer agency representation agreements that are signed too. So red flags are, an indecisive agent or agent that doesn't really sound like they know what they're talking about, or if they can't adequately answer your questions or make you feel comfortable that they know what they're talking about. And the other one is the one that is, we call it commission breath. They seem kind of desperate
Yeah.
and really want you to anxiously, like they're trying to get you to sign. You should be very reluctant before you sign anything with either a buyer's agent or a seller's agent. Most people don't realize, and we've dealt with this on both sides, on the listing side and the buyer representation agreement side. Once you sign that contract, you are in contract with that agent either as a buyer's rep or a listing agent. Usually it's a 6-month contract. The only way out of that contract is you'd have to really adamantly prove your case to the broker that you were misled, misguided, or absentee or neglectful. Meaning, hey, I tried to call this agent, he won't call me back, he or she won't call me back. That's the only real case that a person has to get out of a contract after they sign it. And a lot of consumers don't know that. That's pretty binding. So let's say I smooth talk you into signing a listing agreement with me. You weren't really sure about me to begin with. And a few weeks later, you're like, hey, look, I want out of this contract. Now, look, I'm the type of agent that I don't want to work with somebody that doesn't want to work with me.
Right.
But there are agents out there that will say, I don't care. We have this contract for 6 months. And if things don't go well, they can decide to sit on your listing.
Right. I can lock up the listing by getting him to sign.
Correct. So red flags are indecisive or agents that don't know, seems like they don't know what they're talking about. And the commission breath, desperate to get you to, like, smooth. If you feel like sales talk happening, sales smooth talk should not be happening in this process. Just like your profession, this is a consultative deal.
Right.
When I sit down with somebody, it's a consultation to see what's going on with them. What's our goal? What are we trying to accomplish? By when? And consultatively talk you through that process. If you at any point feel like there's smooth sales talk happening, that should be a red flag, because I know on our license, it's a salesperson's license, but this is really a consultative guy, just like you. Just like you guys, you know all too well, but the average consumer doesn't. So again, red flags are those.
Interesting. Then again, there's some things that are parallel to us, and I would tell people that when they're meeting with an advisor, same kind of thing. If you're feeling pressured, especially in a first meeting,
Right.
like when we do our first meeting, we don't even talk about numbers. But if you get into early on and they're very product centric, somebody's trying to push you towards a specific product, if you get that sense, or especially all our eggs in one basket, because it's seldom a one solution plan that when we're working with clients. And so parts of it are very similar. If you get the sense in my industry as well, if somebody's really pushing you towards one specific thing, or you even just feel like you're really getting pushed one way or the other or sold something, that's when you really should put on the brakes. So I think that's good advice. That's good advice for just about anybody. But I really think that that's something that can get overlooked because when you're anxious to sell your house and move, you're excited. You want to have somebody represent or somebody who's selling the house. And so I think a lot of those red flags, I know when I'm listed my house before, some of those things I didn't really consider. I probably maybe even had some blinders on because I was just excited about, the changing and moving versus in our world, people are, you're talking about moving their money or moving things around. You know, they typically are a lot more cautious. Sounds like we should be, but you should. Why would you be less cautious when you're doing something with your biggest investment, arguably, which would be your
Yes.
home?
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, that is really interesting. That's something to think about for sure. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Those are
Absolutely.
some great insights.
Yeah. Absolutely. And same from your side too. And I would like to encourage anybody watching this to especially entrepreneurs, self-employed business owners, even just regular families, sit down with a financial advisor because I sat
Absolutely.
down with you, you and your son Michael, a few weeks ago, and I'm entirely comfortable through the whole process. Late in life, right? I'm 44 years old, and just being around you guys and hearing how you talk, I like the fact that you don't have minimums. That's really big, and I think that's really scary for a lot of people. They think they need this chunk of money in
Right.
order to get your advice,
Right.
but you don't. I
No,
mean, you just need to come in. How much does it cost to have a consultation with
it's
you?
zero.
$0.
Zero.
So why wouldn't you, sit down with a professional to see what's going
Yeah,
on?
and most financial professionals are like that. So it doesn't have to be me. It could be, but you really should go sit down with somebody, and I would encourage that because it kind of goes back to that first thing. Is the worst thing you could do is put it off. You don't, it's you don't necessarily wait to go to a doctor when you're sick. You
Right.
have well visits. And so go see somebody and just get an opinion on where you're at and what you have going on. And we do that all
Yep.
the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And same goes for me in my profession. I've had buyers, reluctant to meet with me,
Yeah.
feeling like they're going to owe me something, and it's like I don't get paid anything.
Yeah.
Where,
Well, I've called you a couple of times with client questions. I've said I'm going to phone a friend,
right?
and I said,
Yeah.
"Hey, Walter, what's going?" And gotten your advice for clients that are in some situations, and you've always been real, and so it's always great to have good professional advice, especially when you can go see somebody, like that you're not going to get pressured from, that really that's invested and cares about who they're working with. And I
Right.
think at the end of the day, I think that's another thing that we share is, yeah, you really do. You got to care. If you don't care, people can tell. And I really do care about my clients and care about what they're trying to do, and even just folks in general. I always try to get them to. I try to surround myself with a team of experts, and so whenever it's like real estate stuff, I'm calling Walter,
Right. Yeah.
and but that's just that's just the nature of things, and I think that's just the way it should be.
Absolutely. Like, and I'll one final point, and I'll wrap this up. Like, I had a client reach out to me, a potential client reach out to me at the end of last year, about listing their home, and I was like, "Look, what are we trying to accomplish, and what's the goal?" In real, no real rush. And after finding out a few things, I'm like, "Look, guys, we shouldn't go on the market right now. If you can wait, ideally after spring, after Mardi Gras is like the best time to list the property. So I think we should shoot for that." It was like 6 months out. I'm only mentioning that because the red flags that you should look for is the agents. Oh yeah, we should definitely get this on the market now, like right this second. If I was the desperate, money hungry sales commission breath agent, I would have absolutely said, "Oh yeah, let's list the property now," and that's not what's in the client's best interest. So yeah, same goes for you. It seems like.
Interesting. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely,
So.
absolutely.
All right, Mark, man, I appreciate the chat. Thanks for chopping it up with me. I think I enjoyed this a lot. I think we're going to do a few more of these.
Yeah, this was great.
Yeah,
Anytime. Love
absolutely.
doing this.
Absolutely. All right, Mark, thank you so much. And that's it. Look forward to chatting with you the next time, man.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and I'll sure I'll be upstairs in a few minutes asking you something else, about
Yep, yep.
something unrelated. So thanks for the chat.
All right, man.
And that's it. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, please consider reaching out to Mark or myself if you need any of our help. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff if you like the content. But that's it. I appreciate you, Mark.
Good deal.
All
See you
right.
guys later.